Hi, everyone. This is Bailey Liu with the Washington State Charter School Association, your host for the Fundraising Learning Series, where I bring in experts to talk about equity-driven fundraising practices. Today, I'm bringing in a champion in the charter sector, Scott Hicke, to talk with us his fundraising, events, and expertise. Scott is the first development director for the Washington State Charter sector and is the founding science teacher at Rainier Prep. Welcome, Scott.
Thanks so much, Bailey. It's great to have the invitation.
Would you tell us a little bit about your fundraising event?
Our most recent fundraiser, our third this past fall, was called Pathfinders, to recognize a number of trailblazing things that Rainier Prep has been up to. And that fundraiser was actually really successful. It raised more than our previous two combined. We just really have a dedicated board and committed group of core major donors and partners that are willing to spread the word.
Congratulations. That's super exciting. You also had an increase in corporate sponsorship this year. What strategies have worked for you? And would you walk us through the process of identifying, qualifying, and cultivating new corporate partners?
We, of course, begin with our board. Every board member brings a different series of talents and skills and contributions. And so we're very fortunate to have a critical mass of board members that do have pretty substantial connections in the business and corporate community. So when we began 3 years ago with corporate sponsorships, it was through the efforts of mainly one board member to connect us with 3 corporate sponsors. That's where we started. And then because of this board member's interest in expanding our access, he has been pretty critical in bringing in other potential corporate sponsors by linking us with other people that he knows with those connections. And then I will follow up and see if any of those are viable. And in some cases, the board member just takes care of that directly and the sponsorship comes in. In others, it's an email connection for us to follow up with. And that's been great capacity building for us to really understand what kind of very quick and clear messaging we can get to very busy people. All of our sponsors really do believe that they're investing in the community. And I think that's really important, that we've had partners that are mission aligned, that understand what they are investing in and contributing to, that when we do follow up with the one-on-one, they really appreciate that. And that's pretty important. But I think just as Rainier Prep is very consistent on representing that this is a community work in progress, that is something that really resonates with our corporate partners as well. They understand from the beginning how important community is to us. And if they already have that kind of alignment and understanding, then it's a mission match. I would say, finally, because we're a 5th through 8th grade middle school, we do a lot with our 8th graders to get them ready for college prep and for high school prep. And one connection in particular that makes a lot of sense to our corporate sponsors is that we are working with their potential workforce in the future. A lot of our kids see these organizations and would really benefit from being in roles like that. And I think our corporate partners also understand that diversity is not necessarily equity in the workforce, that just bringing in our young, talented students of color is not enough. That, as we really strive to understand what an equitable world would be like, an equitable education, I do believe that our corporate partners also understand that as well and are taking the steps in their own organizations to really understand what it would mean to create an equitable workplace. And that is really important to us as well.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for sharing that. I think it's super important that partners are mission aligned, right? Because then they're not just a one-time relationship. In terms of making the ask, what is your advice for securing that sponsorship?
We begin with a lead sponsor. So again, coming back to our board members have been able to identify partners that are at a fairly high and substantial and significant level. And so we build what we call a giving matrix around that lead sponsor. And so nobody will go above that sponsor, but we scale our giving levels accordingly from that lead gift. This year, there was a major donor that wanted to be involved in the sponsorship. And so that has also been helpful when you've got donors that want to forward their gift in order to raise the visibility of what sponsorship could really be. So we were fortunate to have a great lead gift, a second tier major donor gift that added into the fact that we could communicate to potential partners. We have already raised X amount of dollars would you join in this? With that giving level matrix, even in the first email contact that I would have with somebody, I include that communication in there with them so they can immediately see what level they can comfortably fit into. And for the first round, we encourage them to decide what level that they're actually giving at. And that gives us space for us to ask more in the future, say for next year's event. So board connections, lead sponsors, major donors that want to give into that. And then that's where we were really successful this past year, is that we already had key sponsors in each of our giving levels that was we were reaching out to other potential connections. We could tell them and they could see where these other sponsorships would fit in so they could make that determination. I think just with foundation work, sponsors want to be part of something that's already existing. So they want to kind of see where they fit in. I think another thing that's super, super important is that we're dealing with people with limited time. And so having bullet points about what exactly they are supporting is really important. They need to know that they're supporting into a fundraising event, the amount that we want to raise, why we're actually trying to raise it. With that information in hand, along with the giving matrix, they're able to make their decision. I would say a final piece that's pretty important is pictures, whether that's a picture that really truly conveys the student experience, but also having the logos for the corporate sponsors that are already there. So say in an online registration page, logos have to be right. They need to look good. They need to be spot on, and it needs to be set up so that it's clear that other spots could be filled by other people's sponsorship. These are things that really just can't be left till like the last minute or building something up. Like right from the beginning, people need to see where they can fit in, and they need to see that on the giving page. They also need to see that in the communications where it's a quality picture of our students and our work.
Thank you, Scott. And you actually started sharing a little bit about stewardship, right? Like stewardship starts with right after you secure the gift, and making sure the logo looks good and making sure that they're happy with that what you promised them, you're fulfilling. I'd love for you to expand on that. What are the top 3 ways you can continue to steward them?
I mentioned before the one-on-one communication. So the first thing is pictures. Really encouraging the staff to snap something in the middle of what they're doing to capture what is going on at the school. And those are things that we can use in very quick one-on-one communications with our sponsors to just keep them updated and let them know this is what we're doing and this is what you have invested in. I think it's also made me think about one other piece is when we're working with a sponsor, really understanding who their contact person needs to be so that we're not putting emails in their email box that they're not really going to look at, so that they associate working with Rainier Prep as something that they can engage on at the frequency and cadence that they need to. But in most cases, our partners really appreciate the one-off communications where it really matters. So a couple of sentences in the picture really does go a long way for them to understand that they're partners. The second piece is understanding that other people at their group or corporation might want to be involved. Volunteering at the school is something that we had a really vibrant way of inviting people into that before COVID and are now building up, where there are opportunities to help a family with financial aid applications on a particular organized Saturday, or help students with their high school essays. So we do have one corporation that has never focused on supporting us financially, but we have about 10 members from their group that are working one-on-one with students to help their high school applications move forward in their high school essays. Super, super important to us to have that extra human power behind our work, which we just can't really manage all that time as a smaller staff. And I would say third is really highlighting any way in which our groups can talk about their work in the community as business people or as corporation officers. So whether that's coming to the school in person or virtually for a lunch talk about their job, or whether it's exploring the possibility of a job shadow program where a student could have a mentorship role or where they could see how work actually happens. really thinking through what the possibilities would be like, because in those cases, the corporation and the people that work there, because they are built of people, have another way of connecting. And that is not only authentic to our mission to expose our students to what the possibilities are in the community, but also to build our community out farther. And if that winds up translating into increased financial donations, then that's great. But if it doesn't, we're still fulfilling our mission by having our students see who they could be by actually having that outside of a classroom experience and much more in what is in fact the real world.
I appreciate that you made sure that you were engaging your partners beyond sponsorship and through these partnership opportunities, and to invite them to be a part of the school, whether as a volunteer or speak to students. I think these are really important, right? Like they can see the work in action. As for all of your valuable advice and walking us through all of these processes, and just really appreciate having you as a colleague in the sector, and thank you so much for being here.